Stunning moment. Little girl's plea sparks. Millionaire father's incredible rush to save her. Nathan Reynolds sank into the plush leather seat of his office, the hum of the outside world a distant echo. The golden plaque on his desk gleamed with his name. Nathan Reynolds, entrepreneur. But today, none of that mattered. His world spun at the edges of despair. The glaring absence of his wife a constant presence, like an uninvited guest haunting him. Then, like thunder in a clear sky, he received a call from the school. Lily had crumbled in class, her 10-year-old heart incapable of bearing the weight of expectation. "I just want you to see me," she'd cried, breaking down in front of her classmates. His daughter's unfiltered plea reverberated through his mind, igniting a storm of shame and helplessness. That evening, the silence in their opulent home felt oppressive. Every corner spoke of his late wife, her laughter, her encouragement, while Lily sat on the couch, staring blankly ahead, frustration and tears mingling on her cheeks. Nathan's heart raced. He should have done more, should have known sooner. Instead, he felt helpless, a confined prisoner of wealth and responsibility, trapped in a gilded cage of expectations. His thoughts spun. How could he bridge this emotional chasm? The whispers of affluent peers in his mind mocked him with reminders of societal prestige, even as he clung to his resolve to help his daughter. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Nathan took a deep breath, determination paving a path through his guilt. He envisioned a new tutoring program, something that could not only help Lily but also illuminate the burden other children carried under the oppressive weight of competition. Yet his heart sank as doubts crept in. Would he be ridiculed? After all, the Reynolds name was tied to success and privilege. The thought of stepping into that world of advocacy felt foreign, his tailored suit not designed for battles of the heart. Each session gathered momentum, yet Lily felt like a distant star, a brilliant light forever out of his reach. Fingers itching for a phone call to the school administration were replaced by whispers of disapproval from his peers. How could he risk everything for a program perceived as beneath them? Every attempt to connect with Lily weighed against the looming scandal, rumors of negligence from affluent families ready to denounce any deviation from the standard. The stakes climbed higher, and the emotional toll on both their shoulders felt insurmountable. Just when Nathan believed they were finding solace together, an unexpected revelation shattered that fragile peace. An anonymous complaint, threatening to expose discrepancies among applicants, intensified the tension swirling around the program. His mind raced. Did this jeopardize everything he'd built for Lily and others? As he prepared for the confrontation ahead, his insides churned with anticipation and dread. Nathan faced the mirror of his own failures, recognizing the real battle fought within. Would he stand firm against those who wielded privilege like a weapon, or would he falter and drown in their expectations? The line between father and advocate blurred as he teetered on the precipice of everything he had wanted to achieve, a tempest of loyalty and accountability roiling inside him like a relentless storm. The next day, Nathan awoke to a suffocating silence broken only by the distant drone of traffic outside. He flipped the morning newspaper open, half-heartedly scanning the headlines. An article blared about his family's philanthropic endeavors, another glossy portrayal of the Reynolds reputation, yet it felt distant, almost mocking. Was it all meaningless in the face of his daughter's anguish? The thought settled heavily in his chest as he glanced at Lily's closed bedroom door, a barrier between him and the daughter whose pleas still echoed in his mind. Determination coursed through him as he prepared for the inevitable meeting with the school administration. His suit, tailored and expensive, felt like armor against the criticism that lingered in the air. Yet beneath it all, he felt exposed, vulnerable. Each step toward the school felt weighted with expectation, not just from the administration, but from himself. He was not just confronting them, but also entering a battleground of unseen judgment among peers who had shaped his world. In the conference room, faces familiar to him, not only as colleagues, but as competitors scrutinized his every move. The principal, an imposing figure who radiated authority, was flanked by counselors who whispered among themselves. Nathan squared his shoulders, summoning the courage to speak openly about his vision. Pushing the fear down, he began outlining the tutoring program, detailing how it could alleviate some of the pressures children faced. "What you've proposed seems noble," the principal said, her tone tinged with skepticism. "But you understand these children are accustomed to high expectations. Your intentions may be well placed, but what authority does a successful businessman have in this sphere?" The words stung, buried in layers of privilege. It drove home a painful truth. His success meant little in the world of emotional support, his credentials seemingly tarnished by his affluent upbringing. Nathan felt a flicker of self-doubt ignite within him. He had spent years vaulting over financial hurdles, yet this emotional terrain felt disorienting and treacherous. At that moment, a stray thought broke through, his instinct to empathize. He felt the burden of every child who had cried out in class, striving for approval, for some semblance of recognition. With renewed urgency, he leaned forward, his voice firm. "What matters is not my past, but the future we can craft for these children. They deserve a space where they are valued for who they are, not just for their grades or family names. If my name brings attention to this program, I will use it, not as a shield, but as a beacon." As the meeting continued, Nathan stood firm through mixed reactions, defiance swirling within him. Internal doubts gnawed at the edges of his thoughts, but he leaned into the discomfort, choosing to embrace vulnerability instead of retreating into the armor of wealth. Each question posed to him, each skeptical glance from the panel, felt like an invocation to reevaluate his own beliefs about success and worthiness. When he finally stepped out of the tense meeting, Nathan was met with a mixed bag of emotions. The principal had denied his program for now, citing concerns about its viability, yet a small voice in his head whispered, this was not over. His daughter needed more than lip service. She needed action. That evening, as he sat with Lily during dinner, her eyes still glistening from the fallout of her breakdown, Nathan realized that every decision he made would ripple out to those precious moments they shared. He could not let fear dictate his actions, nor could he let external judgment drown his commitment to her well-being. But as he tucked her into bed, a new realization dawned on him. Where there was failure, there was resilience waiting to flourish. If the doors at the school remained closed, he would find another way. Just as Nathan climbed into bed, a notification pinged on his phone, a message from a former mentor in the education sector. "We need to talk. I think it's time to disrupt some norms." The words hung in the air, electrifying him with possibility. The necessity of facing both the emotional and systemic challenges loomed ahead, and Nathan felt a new storm brewing, one that might just redefine everything he believed about advocacy and parenting. What would it mean to confront an entire system while striving to be the father his daughter needed? Nathan's heart raced as he read the message again, the words spectacularly charged with potential. Disrupting norms sounded idealistic, but necessary, a call to action that resonated deeply. He tossed and turned for hours, the evening's discussions with the school playing like a relentless loop in his mind. Each dismissal felt sharper than the last. But slipping beneath the weight of self-doubt was no longer an option. He felt an undeniable urgency to act. He needed to meet his mentor, see what possibilities lay beyond the rejection he'd faced. At dawn, Nathan poured himself a cup of coffee and grabbed a notebook to jot down his thoughts. The pages began to fill with ideas, sketches of not just a tutoring program, but a broader vision. Resources, partnerships, mental health initiatives, a comprehensive system that would stretch beyond traditional confines. Sitting in the coffee shop where they'd agreed to meet, he nervously stirred his drink, watching the door. Michael, the mentor, was a seasoned educator who had spent decades reforming educational practices. Their conversations had always sparked ideas in Nathan, illuminating paths he had never considered. When Michael walked in, Nathan felt a wave of reassurance. They exchanged pleasantries, but Nathan wasted no time diving into what he had envisioned. "It's not just about a tutoring program," he explained, his passion bubbling over. "It's about creating an infrastructure that values emotional well-being as much as academic success. It needs to be a safe space where every student can thrive." Michael listened intently, nodding occasionally, and took a moment to respond thoughtfully. "You're correct, Nathan. Students are more than grades. Being fully seen means addressing their emotional landscape. But you know it won't come easy. There's a lot of institutional inertia, and you'll face resistance." Nathan leaned forward, ready for the challenge. "I'm not afraid of resistance. I'm learning to channel my privilege into something meaningful. I want to shake the system until it responds. But I'll find allies. I need your expertise in navigating these waters." Michael offered a wry smile. "You've got the fire. I admire that. But execution is as important as vision. We need a concrete plan, a structure that can gain traction. Let's talk funding, partnerships, logistics." Hours seemed to fly by as they strategized, ideas intertwining, each one sparking another. Nathan wrote furiously, mapping connections he could reach out to. Local businesses, alumni, community advocates, all potential allies in a fight to redefine success. As the conversation veered toward specific tactics, Nathan grew nearly giddy with enthusiasm. When they wrapped up, Michael's expression turned serious. "This will test you, Nathan. Confronting entrenched beliefs is not for the faint-hearted. You'll need resilience to navigate both the emotional and political landscapes. Are you prepared for that?" Nathan paused, considering the gravity of the question. "It's not just about me anymore. It's about Lily and kids like her. I refuse to let them slip through the cracks." With a firm handshake and a mutual agreement to collaborate, Nathan left the coffee shop transformed, invigorated by a sense of purpose that neared clarity. The road ahead was daunting, yet a flicker of excitement lit a fire inside him. Back home, Nathan found Lily sprawled across the living room floor, coloring. Checking to ensure she was absorbed in her world of imagination, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. Would these changes, this new path, be enough to reshape her experience? Would she see the cumulative efforts and feel valued, finally embraced for her true self? As he paused, a thought sent a shiver down his spine. Disruption might be more profound than he initially anticipated. The stakes were climbing in ways he had not fully grasped. The next day, he would embark on a daunting task, reaching out to those entrenched in the educational establishment, a group that had once felt imposing, but now seemed like critical obstacles to dismantle. Would they see his vision, or perceive another wealthy man pushing an agenda? That night, as Nathan prepared for bed, he resolved to stand firm and ready. He would plant seeds that might take time to flourish, but every commitment would become a ripple, impacting not only the schools, but also, perhaps, the very definition of success within his family. What would happen when he finally met the resistance that Michael had warned him about? Would Nathan find a way to further his cause, or would the very system he'd set out to change draw him back into doubt? As the first rays of sunlight crept through the slats of the blinds, Nathan stood at the kitchen sink, staring at the humming kettle. Today marked the beginning of his expedition into the depths of an institution he was determined to shake to its core. A deep-rooted fear twisted in his stomach, but it was eclipsed by the urgency to protect Lily and others like her from being overlooked by a fractured system. He dressed with careful intention, choosing a simple navy blue shirt and dark jeans, a subtle statement of approachability mingled with professionalism. Today, He needed to be taken seriously, not just for himself, but for every child whose potential had been stifled. He ran through his mental checklist: research materials, proposals, and a strategy designed to articulate his vision while remaining open to dialogue. Arriving at the district office was daunting. It loomed like a fortress of tradition, cold and unyielding. Walking through the metal detector, he felt the weight of the watchful eyes around him. Fellow parents, educators, and bureaucrats. Each passerby represented a potential ally or a gatekeeper of the status quo. In the waiting area, Nathan fidgeted with a stack of papers, flipping through the pages to remind himself of the ideas he'd carefully curated. But he couldn't escape the sensation of vulnerability creeping in. Would they understand his intent? Would they cast him aside as just another well-meaning benefactor, seeking to impose change without understanding the intricacies of the system? After what felt like an eternity, he was ushered into the meeting room, where the first hurdle of resistance awaited him. Seated around a long oak table were influential educators and administrators, their expressions a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Nathan took a deep breath, centered his thoughts, and began. "I realize our time is valuable," he said, maintaining eye contact with several members of the group. "I'd like to share how we can reshape our educational infrastructure to support not just academic success, but emotional resilience and personal growth." Their responses came almost immediately, a volley of questions challenging him to defend his proposals. Their skepticism felt like a maze, each turn leading him into deeper intellectual quandaries. He stood firm in the face of the whirlwind, articulating his ideas with newfound clarity. "This isn't about money or privilege," he asserted. "It's about creating an environment where children like Lily don't have to fight for their right to succeed. Your collective expertise can help create the safe spaces they need." As the conversation unfolded, Nathan discovered an unexpected ally, Harriet, a veteran educator with decades of experience. "What you're advocating for has been in the making for years, Nathan," she said, her voice softening. "But the truth is, systemic change takes time and collaboration. We've seen proposals fall flat because they didn't adequately consider the existing frameworks." He considered her words, picturing the layers of bureaucracy that would claw at his every attempt to instigate real change. It was a delicate balance. Nathan couldn't push too hard, or risk being dismissed as just another wealthy outsider trying to impose ideas without listening. "Tell me, Harriet," he replied, "how can I facilitate genuine collaboration? What steps can we take together?" The ensuing discussion was both exhilarating and exasperating. Ideas bounced from one person to another, contradicting, yet illuminating, revealing their shared frustrations. Nathan became adept at reading between the lines, realizing the cultural resistance wasn't purely avoidance, but a strong defense against years of failed promises. But just as he started to feel momentum build, a voice interrupted. The district superintendent, a towering figure known for her resolve. "Change is ambitious, Nathan. But you must understand. There are limited resources and countless competing demands. You'll need to justify your vision beyond your personal motives. We need verifiable outcomes." Nathan felt the blood rush to his face, the tension curling in his gut. Did she not see the broader implications? His mind raced with the possibilities of navigating this minefield. Could he present a plan that demonstrated measurable success without sacrificing the very intention that drove him here? Was he prepared for this level of institutional scrutiny? The clarity of his purpose wavered under the pressure of skepticism. It became clear that Nathan could not just float ideas. He would need to ground them in reality. He left the meeting knowing he had ignited a spark, but uncertain how far he could push against the tide of entrenched beliefs. Now more than ever, it was imperative to reckon with his self-doubt. For this wasn't just about a program. It was potentially about redefining success for his daughter and hundreds of others. As he walked out of the building, dread encroached once more. What would he need to sacrifice to convince them and hold on to his vision? The road ahead was murky, filled with greater stakes and deeper challenges. Nathan felt the pulse of resolve in his heart. He couldn't retreat. The moment loomed ever closer as he considered how to turn the tide of opinion in his favor. Would the approaches he planned to take yield results, or would they lead to further isolation from the very allies he hoped to gain? The echo of the meeting still reverberated in Nathan's mind as he walked briskly through the parking lot. Each spoken doubt clung to him, but there was also a flicker of hope ignited by Harriet's support. It was a narrow path ahead, one that required strategic maneuvering and undeniable proof of concept. Yet he felt the pressure of time weighing heavily upon him. As he slid into his car, the engine's hum provided a momentary distraction. Nathan turned on the radio, but the words washed over him like static noise. He had to focus. He needed data, real examples of successful reform to back his vision. The flurry of thoughts twisted into a solid plan. He would reach out to schools that had implemented similar initiatives. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen as he navigated to his contacts. "Jessica, hey, it's Nathan. Do you have a moment to talk?" He barely processed the pleasantries. The urgency behind his voice propelled him forward. Jessica was a former colleague turned educational consultant with a wide network of connections. "I need data on alternative educational frameworks, specifically ones that emphasize emotional health, something tangible." As the conversation flowed, she offered invaluable insights and agreed to send over resources they had previously compiled from their work. Nathan felt a surge of determination re-energizing him. Every word Jessica shared seemed to weave a potential safety net for Lily and her peers. Later that evening, Nathan spread the materials across his dining table, dissecting case studies and outcomes. The glowing testimonials and statistics began to form a tapestry of proof, supporting what he believed in so deeply. He focused on the schools that had shown success, changing hearts and minds through approaches emphasizing individualized learning and mental wellness. But as he pieced together his argument, a familiar voice crept into his thoughts, the superintendent's stern reminder echoing persistently. "You'll need to justify your vision beyond your personal motives." Reeling from the weight of that expectation, Nathan confronted a new inner turmoil. The drive to help Lily was deeply personal, but would that carry the weight needed in boardrooms? Seeking balance amid his frustration, he turned his gaze inward. He'd spent years chasing success in his career, metrics that defined his worth in business, but he had to translate that into something meaningful for education. He had learned to measure success not just in dollars, but in the joy of shared learning experiences. The following day, Nathan reached out to Harriet again, seeking her wisdom and perspective. "Could I present my findings to the board, possibly alongside you?" he proposed, feeling the words materialize with sincerity. "I want to ensure I'm aligning my approach with the existing frameworks you mentioned." "The board respects my experience, Nathan. This could bridge the gap," she replied, her tone warming slightly. "But you must be prepared. Not everyone will welcome change readily, especially with data that demands a reallocation of resources." With each passing hour, Nathan absorbed reviews of his research, mentally rehearsing the presentations, an arming of sorts for the battle to come. He strategized talking points and rehearsed scenarios in which he might face opposition, crafting responses weighted with empirical findings. His preparations grew increasingly robust, but doubts still lurked. What if Harriet couldn't rally the others to his cause? What if they dismissed him entirely despite all his efforts? The fear reminded him how vulnerable he had chosen to be, putting everything on this leap into educational reform. The time came to finalize his presentation. Minutes turned into an animated montage of stats and anecdotes, forming an idealistic yet powerful argument before him. Yet even as he felt pride in his work, he knew the next meeting would define everything. Not just for him, but for Lily. Would he leave a mark that could reshape futures, or fade into the background noise of bureaucracy? The answer rested just beyond the horizon of yet another meeting. Stretching the limits of his ambitions, Nathan prepared to confront the very skepticism that had first overwhelmed him. He could feel turbulence stirring. He wasn't just preparing to present. He was preparing to defy the odds and push against a tide that felt insurmountable. With the weight of his vision, and the hope of a little girl driving him. The reality of impending confrontation began to crystallize into something profoundly necessary. Would he find the courage to face the inevitable challenges head-on, or would he falter just as he approached the precipice of change? Nathan stood at the edge of his living room, the final draft of his presentation open on his laptop, the cursor blinking expectantly. Hours spent fine-tuning his slides hadn't dulled the anxiety spiraling within him. Each data point he'd compiled felt like a delicate thread woven into the fabric of a much larger tapestry. The stakes were no longer about mere numbers. They were about real lives, especially Lily's. His heart raced, ignited by a mix of determination and fear. As he pored over his notes once more, a small knock at the door broke his concentration. It was Lily, her small frame framed against the doorway. "Mr. Nathan?" she asked, her innocent tone cutting through the cloud of seriousness enveloping him. "Can I help?" Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of why he was doing this. Nathan knelt to her level, a smile breaking through his tension. "Of course you can help. I need to make this presentation strong so that everyone understands how important it is for kids like you. I can help you practice. I remember what you said about the important numbers," she replied, her enthusiasm infectious. After a deep breath, Nathan welcomed her in. They cleared the dining table and began a makeshift rehearsal. "Imagine you're one of the board members," he instructed, watching her eyes widen with the weight of the role. "If I don't convince you, our school might not change." Lily took on her role with surprising earnestness, asking questions that, while simple, were laced with genuine curiosity. "What's emotional health? Why does it really matter?" Nathan paused, surprised by the depth behind her seemingly innocent inquiry. It struck a chord within him. He wasn't merely presenting for data's sake. He was sharing a movement that could redefine education for children like her. Emotional health is about how we feel and how we handle those feelings. It's important because if we feel good, we learn better, he explained. Lily nodded, her brows furrowing in concentration. "Like when I feel nervous during tests? If they made it easier to feel better, I could do better?" Exactly. He felt a spark within him reignite, his passion simmering. It was a moment of clarity. He had to center his presentation around personal experiences, not just statistics. Data would support his case, but the emotional connection would be paramount. Their practice session continued, and Nathan found himself tailoring parts of his presentation on the fly, infusing it with real-life implications and stories. He realized more than ever that he needed to convey the humanity behind the data. Tiered access to emotional health resources wasn't just a budgetary tweak. It was a lifeline for children who faced daily struggles. The clock ticked ominously towards the evening of the meeting. Nathan steadied himself, aware that he was not just presenting ideas, but becoming a messenger for countless students. As he made his way to the car, he reflected on the power of storytelling and connection. The projection of statistics would not resonate nearly as deeply as revealing the intimate struggles behind them. He arrived at the school, heart pounding, and yet, he felt an odd sense of calm wash over him. This wasn't merely about him anymore. It was about all those students that had been overlooked. He had a responsibility to advocate for them. A small group of board members was already gathered around a table, an air of skepticism lingering among them. Nathan took a moment, recalling Lily's bright eyes. Beneath the weight of institutional doubt, glimmers of hope ignited within him. As he approached the lectern, he took a deep breath and began, determined to illuminate the heart of his mission. But as the sharp daggers of critique began to fly once he finished his introduction, revealing stark opposition from key board members, Nathan felt confidence teetering on the edge. Would his heartfelt articulation be enough to drown out their doubts? Or would he falter under the strain of their scrutiny? The moment had arrived, and now, only one thing was certain. He was ready to confront the very real and personal stakes of this battle, prepared to advocate for a change that transcended metrics, a change that promised to secure a brighter future for Lily and children like her. Nathan grasped the lectern tightly as the board members' critiques hit him like waves crashing on a rocky shore. Words like unsubstantiated and emotional manipulation echoed ominously in his ears, their skepticism pouring forth with precision. Each insult was a wound, but deep down, Nathan understood their perspective was rooted in a fear of change, a reluctance to embrace the unknown. He stammered slightly, wrestling with the resentment that bubbled just beneath his surface. As he glanced down at Lily's sketch drawing on the table in front of him, a vibrant sun encircled by children, he remembered where his passion originated. He had to reclaim the narrative, to show these seasoned board members the weight of what they were discussing. Clarity sparked within him. "Change is daunting, I get it," Nathan began, gaining strength from the conviction slowly knitting itself into his resolve. "But let me share a story." In that moment, he crafted a bridge from data-driven statistics to emotional resonance. He spoke of children who felt invisible, like shadows lurking in hallways, their struggles unnoticed behind stiff classroom walls. With each poignant description, he recalled the moments he had spent in Lily's classroom. Moments where a simple smile or an encouraging word transformed anxiety into creativity. "I met a girl, just like Lily," he continued, feeling the wellspring of inspiration swell within him. "She clutched her test scores, crying because she thought she had disappointed everyone. What if there was a space for her to express her feelings and learn how to process them? Imagine what happens when children like her find their voices, when they realize their emotions matter. They don't just become smarter, they become kinder, more compassionate." A murmur spread throughout the boardroom. He perceived the slightest shifts in their posture, their crossed arms subtly loosening, and for the first time he felt momentum. But just as Nathan found his rhythm, a prominent board member interjected, "Do you really believe anecdotal evidence can sway funding decisions? Our job is to make decisions based on cold, hard facts." The jab threatened to destabilize all he'd built. The urge to justify himself gnawed at him, and for a fleeting moment, doubt crept back in. Could he stand firm against their established norms while advocating for lives that mattered as much as any balance sheet? "Data is essential, I agree," Nathan responded, fighting to maintain his composure. "But numbers can't capture the full picture. They don't reveal the child who feels alone at lunch or the student who fears asking for help. Our role as educators and decision-makers is to understand and empathize with those on the front lines." In the silence that followed, he realized he wasn't just challenging them with statistics, he was fostering a conversation based on empathy, a trait that seemed foreign to the often cold world of educational policy. Could he be the catalyst for this transformation? Could his own vulnerabilities guide their direction? The atmosphere shifted. Some board members exchanged glances, contemplating the idea of merging emotional health with educational statistics. Yet uncertainty still lingered. Nathan's heart raced as the most vocal board member, a skeptic known for their rigid disposition, finally spoke again. "And what about accountability, Nathan? How do we measure success if we alter our framework?" His mind whirled, a maelstrom of thoughts and strategies colliding. Success metrics had always been tangible, but the human experience? That felt slippery, almost elusive. Yet, clarity struck yet again. Perhaps this was the revelation he had been seeking. "We develop new metrics. We gather qualitative data, surveys, feedback from students, and adjustments based on their responses. Success isn't just a number anymore. It's thriving emotionally, mentally, and academically." The board's atmosphere shifted yet again. Murmurs turned into contemplations. As the meeting continued, Nathan felt the tension morph within him. Each challenge thrown his way redefined his purpose, sharpening his resolve. This was more than a battle over outreach programs. It was a pilgrimage toward understanding, an odyssey where he could redefine education on terms that embraced the whole child. Just as Nathan prepared to wrap up, a familiar face appeared at the doorway. Lily's, bright and hopeful. Her small hand waved, the very essence of innocence embodied in that gesture. Suddenly, the future for children like her hung in the balance, like a pendulum waiting for the final push. And in that moment, Nathan understood that the battle wouldn't end tonight. It would cultivate into a relentless pursuit, culminating in a risky new venture that might save the very children educators had forgotten. But would he have the courage to launch that venture, knowing the stakes could lead to both great triumphs and catastrophic failures? With a deep breath, Nathan knew now he must decide. Would he take the leap? Nathan left the boardroom feeling the weight of possibilities pressing against his chest. The mix of adrenaline and anxiety heightened his awareness as he stepped into the hallway, where the echoes of heated discussions still lingered behind him. Though he had found a semblance of support within that room, the feeling of uncertainty wrapped around him like a thick fog, refusing to dissipate. Lily's innocent wave replayed in his mind, an anchor amid the tides of doubt. If he truly intended to fight for children like her, he needed more than passion. He required strategy. Each question he faced had rattled his confidence, yet they had also ignited a drive within him, a desire not just to confront the board, but to create something tangible, something transformative. He found himself at a small coffee shop, a haven of familiarity where he often sought refuge. But today, the caffeine buzz wouldn't be enough. Nathan needed clarity. He reached for his notebook, flipping to the blank pages that awaited his thoughts. Each word he scribbled became a step toward shaping his vision. Focus. He needed a plan. A framework that recognized emotional health as substantive and measurable. The traditional metrics of success felt outdated, unable to account for the shadows lurking behind classroom walls. Could he create a new foundational model that integrated emotional intelligence? Would it hold up against the skepticism of the board? As he wrote, an idea took root. He envisioned a pilot program, an initiative where children like Lily could not just learn academics, but also explore emotional literacy. It would include workshops that taught them to recognize and articulate their feelings, combine mindfulness techniques with social skills training, and foster self-advocacy. He paused, grappling with a critical question. Who would support this? The board still leaned heavily on their spreadsheets and data. The challenge would be securing allies who understood the value of his mission. With renewed conviction, Nathan recognized that he couldn't fight this battle alone. He grabbed his phone and began drafting an email to his colleagues, inviting them to form a coalition dedicated to emotional learning. He hesitated before hitting send. Doubts clawed at the back of his mind. What if they resisted his ideas? What if they turned on him? But this wasn't solely for him. It was for kids like Lily, who deserved more than the status quo. After sending the email, a flicker of hope ignited within him. He realized that forming this coalition could present a united front when he went back to pitch the pilot program to the board. Collaboration meant empowering others to share their stories and insights, weaving their perspectives into a comprehensive approach. Fear still clung to him, but intertwined with it was something else: determination. Nathan mentally divided his work into manageable segments, from gathering data to developing a storytelling strategy that would marry emotions with statistics. He would create testimonials, real stories of that everyday impact that numbers alone could never convey. Hours melted away in the coffee shop as the sun dipped below the horizon, pooling warm light into the small space. Nathan's energy surged with each connection he constructed in his notes. He was becoming the architect of something profound. Yet as ambition filled his mind, another fear began to rise. What if the board dismissed his efforts once again? The thought of rejection weighed heavily. He had to prepare not just to advocate for this vision, but to defend it with unwavering conviction. That evening, he received replies from several colleagues, expressing genuine interest in joining his mission. Relief washed over him, only to be quickly chased by fresh resolve. The time was approaching to gather their stories, to craft his narrative in a way that would not only ignite the passion in others, but also build a pragmatic case for the board. As he left the coffee shop, an unexpected gust of wind tousled his hair, and he stood still for a moment, staring into the twilight. A decision loomed before him. How far was he willing to go to realize his vision? The looming board meeting would demand the utmost from him, both personally and professionally. Armed with this newfound support, Nathan felt bubbling excitement and nervousness intertwine. But once he stepped into that room again, would he have the strength to challenge the status quo and truly embrace the unknown? The following morning, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unexpected source, a prominent community leader known for philanthropy and advocacy for children's education. Would he be willing to meet to discuss possible collaboration? Nathan's heart raced. The stakes had just been raised, and with it, his self-doubt resurfaced. Was he ready for this new avenue, and could a meeting like this pivot his ambition into reality? Nathan stared at the message, heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. The prospect of meeting such a prominent figure in the community felt like a double-edged sword. This could catapult his initiative into reality, or expose him to greater scrutiny than he was prepared to face. The gravity of the moment settled on him as he contemplated whether he could articulate his vision effectively enough to convince someone of this caliber to join his cause. His fingers hovered over the screen, contemplating a response. The urge to secure this meeting and enlist the community leader's influence battled with the fear of inadequacy. What if he fumbled the conversation? Would he be able to communicate the necessity of emotional literacy and education? Questions spiraled in his mind, challenging his resolve. Instead of succumbing to anxiety, Nathan took a deep breath and started jotting down potential talking points. As he listed the statistics and success stories he had gathered, a sense of rationality began to quell his racing heart. He reminded himself of the purpose behind his mission, the children like Lily who needed someone to advocate for their emotional well-being. With each bullet point, he felt more empowered, shedding layers of self-doubt. This was more than just a meeting. It was the potential for change. He finally crafted a response, confirming the meeting for the following week. The moment he hit send, relief washed over him, but it was quickly succeeded by the weight of impending responsibility. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Nathan found himself immersed in research on establishing emotional literacy programs and the growing body of evidence supporting their necessity. Every night he stayed up late, poring over studies, statistics, and expert opinions. He was no longer just an educator. He was becoming an advocate, a tireless source of knowledge with the potential to sway minds. Still, a nagging unease lingered. He couldn't ignore the chance that community leader might not share his vision. What if they dismissed him outright? It was essential to differentiate his approach from others who merely presented data without the underlying human story. The statistics had cold faces behind them, the stories of children who had triumphed against the challenges of emotional neglect. During a group collaboration session with his colleagues, Nathan showcased their progress. Several voices chimed in, sharing emotional anecdotes parallel to the statistics he had compiled. As he listened, he recognized a profound shift occurring within himself. Each shared experience was a ripple effect, merging their aspirations into a collective force. The campaign for emotional literacy started to take on a life of its own, painting a vibrant image of hope that contrasted starkly with his earlier fears. Yet as their discussions heightened in energy, so did the appearance of doubt. He hadn't yet defended his model against the board, much less against a community leader. Self-reflection swept over him, as if he were staring into a mirror of expectations. Days prior to the meeting, Nathan took a moment to step outside, inhaling the brisk air. The freedom that often accompanied the outdoors felt temporarily stifled by looming pressure. It dawned on him that this journey was about more than himself. It was about confronting fear head-on. In those quiet minutes, Nathan made a promise to himself. He would not waver, not shrink back in the face of potential rejection. He would remain steadfast in his conviction of the program's value. As the day of the meeting approached, he envisioned standing before the community leader, confident in the chosen path before him. The possibilities seemed tantalizing, yet an even deeper apprehension brewed within. More poignantly, Nathan pondered how this moment could redefine his trajectory. This moment, where his desires and possibilities collided, felt thick with tension. As he prepared to enter an unfamiliar territory with a powerful figure by his side, he couldn't shake the feeling that unraveling who he truly was in this context would be the most significant challenge yet. Then, a nagging thought struck him with unsettling clarity. If he succeeded in this pitch, how would he handle the pressure of newfound expectations? The answer eluded him, but one truth remained. He was on the brink of something monumental, an opportunity that could either solidify or unravel his aspirations. As he stood at this critical juncture, Nathan felt the energy of his determination meld with uncertainty, a dynamic provocateur ready to break through the barriers of doubt. Just as he felt steadied by the vision of what lay ahead, a new message pinged on his phone, intensifying the sense of urgency. It was a reminder. The board meeting was scheduled for the day after his meeting with the community leader. Would he be ready to confront them and stand firm in his new convictions? Nathan emerged from his meeting with the community leader, energized by the exchange of ideas and the clarifying impact of discussing emotional literacy in education. The leader had been intrigued, asking probing questions that stretched Nathan's understanding and pushed him to articulate his vision with even greater precision. In some ways, it felt like a test, one he had passed, but the real challenge loomed ahead. The follow-up meeting with the board was just a day away, and this time, Nathan wasn't just advocating for a program. He was standing at the forefront of a movement. The night stretched long as Nathan meticulously revised his proposal, weaving in elements of the community leader's insights. He revisited stories he had gathered from students and educators, ensuring they felt alive within his presentation. Every anecdote became a thread, illustrating not just the necessity of emotional literacy, but the tangible impact it could have, a bridge connecting the realm of academia with the intricate tapestry of human experience. That night, sleep eluded him, the promise of a transformative day cascading through his mind like a relentless tide. When dawn broke, Nathan was ready, not just for his meeting with the board, but for the culmination of everything he had worked toward as a father and advocate. He dressed in a smart but approachable manner, feeling both the weight of responsibility and the exhilarating spark of conviction ignited by his daughter's plea for understanding. As Nathan arrived at the district office, nerves thrummed beneath his surface, but he swiftly brushed them aside. Today wouldn't be just about numbers and policies. It was a call to humanity, a testament to resilience buzzing beneath every statistic. He stepped into the meeting room and reverted to the higher purpose that had driven him throughout this journey. The members of the board shuffled papers, their demeanor solid and skeptical. They had heard it all before, ideas peppered with the same empty promises. But today was different. Nathan felt a gravity in his stance, an unyielding determination refracting like light glancing off a polished surface. As he began his presentation, he allowed the stories he held tightly to pour forth. Not just as statistics, but as living, breathing reminders of the stakes at hand. Nurturing emotional intelligence allows children to cultivate relationships with themselves and others, he explained passionately, eyes sweeping across the board. Let me tell you about a student, a girl just like my daughter Lily, who felt crushed under the weight of expectation and academic pressure. She transformed when given a space to explore her emotions and articulate her need for support. He wove stories into the narrative. Each anecdote, paired with compelling data, intensified their impact. Nathan felt a shift occurring in the room, where once skeptical expressions softened as the validity of his argument pierced through the facade of indifference, revealing the humanity behind the numbers. By the end, he stood before them, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he made his final assertion. This initiative is not merely a program, it is a paradigm shift. We need to measure not just grades, but emotional growth. Success cannot be quantified solely by academic achievement. Children thrive in environments where they feel safe, valued, and understood. I invite you to join me in reshaping our educational approach. When the room fell silent, Nathan took a deep breath, heart racing. A board member finally spoke, breaking the tension. You've presented an interesting case, Nathan. I may have been skeptical initially, but I see you've done your homework. Would you be open to a pilot program rather than a system-wide overhaul? We can start small and monitor the results before broader implementation. Joy surged within him, flooding every part of Nathan's being. Absolutely. I believe that starting small can create meaningful opportunities, while we gather the data needed to support wider changes. As discussions unfolded, Nathan found himself at the center of a collaboration instead of a solitary struggle. The walls that had once seemed insurmountable began to fade. By the time they wrapped up, the board had agreed to a trial run of his initiative, and Nathan had secured invaluable commitments from fellow board members to advocate for its wider reach. Leaving the meeting room, he felt a swell of pride. Not merely from the victory, but the realization of the transformative process he had undertaken. No longer bound by his fears, Nathan had emerged as an advocate, grounded in both emotional intelligence and the clarity of purpose that stemmed from his love for Lily. Back home, as he embraced his daughter, he saw the world he had fought for reflected in her smile. Nathan understood this was only the beginning. Reconstructing the educational landscape would take time, patience, and relentless advocacy. But he was ready. Together, they could redefine success for their community, one child at a time. This journey was far from over, but Nathan felt an unwavering sense of belonging now, both as a father and a changemaker. The recognition was not just external. It was a deeply satisfying acceptance of his commitment to nurturing resilience and emotional well-being for all children, particularly for Lily. Nathan knew he held the power to make a difference, and he vowed not to stop until every child was seen, heard, and valued for who they were. The time to transform potential into reality was now. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support us. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know that every action counts in amplifying these transformative narratives.